You know what's worse than being kicked out of your family? Being erased while you're still in the room. That happened to me at 17 during a backyard celebration that looked like something out of a magazine. My mom handed me an envelope with $200 and a one-way bus ticket. No note, no name, just, "It's for the best." 5 years later, I bought the very house they used to forget me, because my name, the one they tried to delete, was on the deed. I built myself from a dusty motel room to owning 3 properties, without a family photo, without anyone cheering. If you've ever felt invisible in your own family, this story will show you how quiet strength becomes the loudest comeback. No revenge, just reclamation. And when I unlocked that front door at the farewell barbecue, no one clapped, no one gasped, but they all saw it. I didn't knock, I bought the lock. If you've ever been written off, don't skip this video. Because your power doesn't need permission, it just needs one moment to return home. Before we dive into the story, if you're enjoying these meaningful stories, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel so you never miss out on more. Now let's start the story together. I was 17 when I learned you could vanish from your own family while standing right in front of them. It was spring in Charleston, the kind that made the breeze feel rehearsed. Our backyard looked like a page from a magazine, string lights tucked between the oaks, paper lanterns glowing like little moons. A jazz quartet played something lively under the veranda, and the scent of rosemary biscuits floated past rows of champagne flutes. I stood just outside the frame, always just outside. People smiled at Ethan, clapped my father on the back, complimented the garden. No one looked my way. Even when they called everyone for the family photo, I hesitated. "Sweetheart, can you slide down just a bit?" one of my aunts asked a cousin. He stepped into the space I thought was mine. I must have blinked for too long because by the time I came back to myself, a server in a bow tie tapped my shoulder. "Your mother's asking for you," he said. "Out back." Behind the trellis where the garden sloped toward the river, Mom stood in heels too high for the gravel. She didn't smile. She didn't hug me. She just handed me an envelope. Inside, $200 in cash and a one-way bus ticket to Asheville. No note. Not even my name on the envelope. "It's for the best," she said, her voice soft but final. I didn't speak. I didn't cry. I didn't ask why. Because somehow I already knew. The worst part wasn't the bus ticket. It was that I'd dressed up for this. Pastel dress, borrowed shoes, lip gloss that didn't quite match. I'd tried. As I stepped back through the side path, applause erupted from the patio. I paused just beneath the string lights. The photographer was calling for one last shot. "Just the immediate family!" someone shouted. Through the window, I saw them lining up. Dad with his arm around Ethan, Mom tilting her head just right. My spot already filled, like I'd never been there at all. The music swelled. My father raised a glass. To 50 years of family, tradition, and new beginnings. I walked away down the driveway, gravel crunching under borrowed heels. The porch lights didn't flicker. The house didn't blink. It simply closed behind me. I didn't cry that night. I told myself I was traveling light, emotionally, too. The bus dropped me at a gas station just outside Columbia. I walked the half-mile to the cheapest motel I could find, past chain-link fences and auto body shops. The sign buzzed like it was trying to hold on to life. So was I. The clerk, Mr. Lang, his tag said, barely looked up. He slid the key across with a glance that wasn't cold, just tired. Like he'd seen hundreds of girls like me, landing with nowhere to go and too little cash to stay. Room 8 smelled like pine cleaner and old sweat. I sat on the bed with the plastic wrap crinkling beneath me, tore open the envelope and counted. Enough for maybe 2 nights if I didn't eat much, 3 if I skipped breakfast entirely. The next morning, I asked the diner across the street if they were hiring. They weren't. Neither was the gas station. The third stop was a thrift store that looked like it hadn't been dusted since 1998. But Angie, the woman behind the counter, gave me a once-over and said, "You breathe, you sort. That's good enough." I worked mornings for cash under the table. Angie talked too much about her ex, her dog, her theories on aliens. I mostly nodded. When she asked where I was staying, I said, "Just passing through." Lunch was whatever expired snack I could slip from the break room. Rice cakes, stale cereal bars, a bruised banana once. Dinner was the same or less. Nights were worse. I tried to sleep, but the sheets itched and the AC sputtered like it was gasping. I curled up with my bag tucked under my arm and the remote clutched like it could save me. At the library, I checked my messages on a public computer. Devin had texted the day after I left, "You okay?" Then silence for a week. When I finally logged into Facebook, my heart kicked once. There it was, Dad's birthday photo. The backyard, the lanterns, the string lights, Ethan front and center, Mom beaming beside him. My chair was gone, literally gone. They'd rearranged the whole row like I'd never existed. Devin texted again the next day. "Heard your folks said they handled their situation. Cold, Nat." That's when it landed. I wasn't part of a situation. I was the situation. I walked out of the library into the muggy heat. Across the street, the diner window reflected me. Sunken eyes, wrinkled collar, hair frizzing in all directions. For a second, I didn't recognize the girl looking back, but she didn't look away. My hands hurt before my heart did. That was progress. Winter crept in early that year. The wind bit through my sleeves like it had something to prove. At the junkyard, metal groaned when I touched it, as if even the scraps were cold. I showed up before the sun, laced my boots with fingers already stiff, and nodded to Joe, who always gave the same half-grunt that meant, "You're late, but I won't say it." I sorted steel from aluminum, learned the difference by feel. My palms blistered, then calloused. Every day I smelled like rust and diesel, and by evening I'd scrub my hands raw in the gas station restroom. I lived out of my car again, but this time, it was by choice. Every dollar I could keep, I did. In the evenings, I took classes at the community college downtown. I sat in the back with a notebook I'd found in a donation bin and a pen that barely worked. Miss Sings, Harper, who taught real estate fundamentals, never asked questions about the bruises on my knuckles or the worn flannel I wore 4 days a week. She just said, "Good instincts, Natalie," when I got a zoning question right. The first property I could afford was a duplex, so crooked, the roofline looked like a shrug. Condemned, gutted, forgotten. But it was mine. Or it would be. After I signed a pile of papers I could barely read without a dictionary. I spent nights in the smaller unit sleeping on an air mattress that hissed at every shift. Lena, a quiet girl from my night class, gave me her old toolbox when she found out. She didn't ask why I needed it. I think she knew. I taught myself to replace copper pipe with PVC using YouTube and trial by water damage. I hammered drywall with hands that still shook sometimes. I didn't ask for help. I didn't want it. The sound of my own effort became a kind of lullaby, scraping, sanding, the thud of a stubborn nail finally giving way. On the coldest night of January, I finished tearing out the last of the moldy walls in what would be my future kitchen. The air inside was colder than the street, my breath showing in clouds. I stood there, crowbar still in hand, staring at the bare bones of the place, and I didn't flinch, not at the cold, not at the quiet. I leaned against the frame and let the silence wrap around me. My body ached, my fingers cracked and bleeding beneath torn gloves, but my chest was steady. I'd never felt that before. That's when I saw it, just behind where a wall used to be. A piece of soft pine carved faintly, almost shyly, 3 letters, NG, my initials, mine. I touched the edge of the carving, thumb tracing the groove. For the first time in over a year, I smiled without forcing it. Not because I had everything figured out, but because I'd built the first thing that couldn't be taken from me. I didn't disappear. I was removed, like a typo in a polished speech. The back room of the thrift shop smelled like dust and old perfume. I was sorting a crate of ceramic figurines when I heard them. 2 regulars whispering like teenagers at a slumber party. I didn't turn around, just listened. "Did you hear what happened with Thomas Green's place?" one said. "Their old house? Yeah, it was used for that loan Ethan took. Collateral, they called it. That boy always had big dreams and no roadmap." They laughed softly. I didn't. I stood still, fingers wrapped around a chipped ballerina. For a moment, I wasn't in that cluttered room. I was 17 again, standing under string lights with an envelope in my hand. But the image shattered quickly, because now I understood. They didn't just send me away, they rewrote the entire page I had lived on. At home that night, I dug through everything I had. Scraps, letters, emails. Nothing had my name on it. Not the deed, not the trust, not even old utility records. It was as if I had never lived there, never belonged. I walked downtown the next afternoon, partly to breathe, partly to feel surrounded by motion. Cafes were buzzing, plates clinking, and college kids on laptops looked like they had it all figured out. That's when I saw her, Miss Harper. She was seated at a sidewalk table, a book in one hand, a cappuccino in the other. She looked up and smiled like no time had passed at all. "You still building?" she asked. I nodded, pulling out a chair. "I'm up to 2 rentals now," I said quietly, "and a duplex I still live in." She sipped her coffee and tilted her head. "Sometimes," she said slowly, "being forgotten is the best cover to build in peace." That line sat with me the rest of the evening. At home, I scrolled through county records, cross-checking addresses. Every search confirmed what the whispers already told me. My family had gone out of their way to erase me. My name didn't appear once. Not on the old house, not on any agreement, not even in the digital attic of legal footnotes. But I was still here. I wasn't broken. I wasn't invisible. I was free. I lit a candle, not for ceremony, but for warmth. The studio still got drafty in winter, and while I waited for my tea to boil, I opened my laptop again. This time, I searched the street I once called home, and there it was. Green residence, foreclosure imminent, auction pending. The kitchen clock ticked louder than usual. I didn't smile, I didn't gloat. I simply stared at the screen, steady and quiet. Because finally I understood what they had done, and finally I knew exactly what I would do next. I never planned on going back. But the house, called like a line, left unfinished. The courthouse steps felt smaller than I remembered. Polished stone kissed by October leaves, the air dry and quiet. I wore jeans and a blazer I found on sale at Angie's shop, hair pulled back the way I used to when I needed to mean business. Nobody glanced at me, and that was perfect. Mr. Sykes, the agent I'd worked with on my last 2 properties, nodded as I approached. "Ready?" he whispered. I didn't answer. I just handed him the sealed envelope. Inside was everything I'd built. 5 years of rust, drywall dust, rejected loan offers, and midnight YouTube tutorials. Inside was the deed, in my name, for the house they once used to erase me. The bidding went faster than I expected. One guy tapped out early, another hesitated just long enough. When the clerk called my number, no one clapped, no one gasped, because no one knew. By the time I left, the sun had started its quiet descent over Charleston's live oaks, their branches casting long shadows like the ones that used to creep across my childhood bedroom floor. The farewell barbecue started at 4. Just a few blocks away, I circled the greenhouse once, then parked across the street in a borrowed truck. A man in khakis carried a tray of ribs. A woman in pearls balanced a stack of plastic cups. Folding chairs lined the lawn like soldiers pretending not to see battle coming. From a distance, I spotted Ethan clapping someone's back, laughter perfectly timed. Margaret walked by with a glass of rosé, still impossibly composed. Thomas stood by the grill, spatula in hand, charming a circle of old neighbors with a story he probably told better than it happened. I waited until they were all distracted, until the noise had peaked and was beginning to hum. Then I got out. My boots hit the same cracked pavement I once left at 17, only now they were heavier, firmer. I carried no bags, just a small manila envelope. This one didn't hold a bus ticket or loose cash. This one had my name and the deed. No one noticed me until I reached the driveway. One of the guests, an older woman with a red scarf, tilted her head but said nothing. A balloon bounced against the porch rail, the sound sharp against the thinning air. I climbed the steps without rushing, just like before. But this time, the door didn't feel foreign. It felt returned. I slid the key into the lock. It turned clean, no resistance. The laughter behind me stumbled, then stopped. Somewhere, a plastic cup dropped. I didn't look back. I stepped inside and closed the door. For once, I decided who stayed out. They shut the door once. I didn't knock again. I bought the lock. The air inside was still. Afternoon light stretched long across the hardwood, catching in the dust that danced without shame. I stood in the entryway and let it wrap around me like a question finally answered. The house smelled like old wood, faint lemon polish, and something else, maybe time. My boots echoed softly as I walked through the kitchen. The walls had been painted over, but if you looked close enough, you could still see the faint lines where my height had been charted year after year. Tiny notches in the trim. Age 6, first lost tooth. Age 10, finally taller than the counter. I touched one with my finger and smiled, not at the memory, but at the fact that it was still here, even when I hadn't been. Outside, I heard the shuffle of footsteps, the murmurs, the click of heels on concrete. They had finally noticed. I opened the door before they could knock. Thomas stood closest, his tie loosened, a cigarette pinched between his fingers, though he hadn't lit it yet. Margaret clutched her phone like a lifeline. Ethan looked down, then back up, like he was waiting for a cue. I didn't say anything. I didn't have to. I held out the envelope. Cream. Thick. Uncreased. Inside was the deed. Ethan took it, almost reluctantly. Margaret gasped, just once. Thomas lit his cigarette with hands that trembled slightly, then took a long drag, exhaling sideways. No one asked a question. No one apologized, and I didn't fill the silence for them. Miss Harper once told me, "The loudest truths arrive in quiet." She was right. There was nothing more to explain. They stepped back, almost in sync, like the tide pulling away from shore. I stepped forward. The porch creaked under my weight. I didn't look over my shoulder as I turned and crossed the threshold again. I walked to the living room, the one where they used to host Christmas mornings, and sat down on the floor. No furniture, no ceremony, just me, the light and the warmth of old floorboards heating under the afternoon sun. The door eased shut behind me with a sound soft as breath. No applause, no forgiveness, no final word, only presence, only peace, only mine. When I finally closed the door behind me, it wasn't revenge I felt, it was release. Sometimes life teaches us that being removed from something doesn't mean we lose. It means we're being cleared to rebuild. Family isn't always who stays in the photo, but who remembers you when no one else does. Forgiveness doesn't always need words. Sometimes it simply means choosing peace over proof. If this story touched something in you, feel free to share your thoughts or memories. Your voice matters here.